Hey there, Wargamers, and welcome back to another Wargames Delivered video. In this video, we're going to be doing an advanced Zenithal highlight with our airbrush. Let's get started. Alright, so essentially in this video, what we're going to do is basically the same technique that we used in the previous Zenithal highlighting video. I would call this one the Zenithal highlighting 2.0 video, because this is pretty much getting your base tone, your shade, your highlight, your mid-tone all done in one step. And again, always make sure your airbrush is clean before you use it. It's a key step there, and work out all of the airbrush cleaner before you actually put any paint in, because that can have some horrible effects if you've got paint and airbrush cleaner in there. It pretty much just won't stick. It'll just spray like liquid onto the model. But the way that we are going to start this model off is we're going to take the mid-tone, which is the ultramarine blue here that we have, and we're going to mix that with our matte black, about a 2-to-1, 2 ultramarine to 1 matte black, and of course add a little bit of your mixing medium in there as well. And now what we're going to do with this darker blue is we're pretty much going to use this as our shade. But we're going to cover the entire model with it first because it's going to be our darkest tone, and we're going to build up from there. So as you can see there, I just added a little bit of the black just to darken it down a bit. And as you'll see, a little bit of black does wonders, pretty much in any color for the most part. As you can see, we've got a very darker blue here. This will serve as a very nice base coat and initial layer for us to build up from. And always make sure to add a couple of drops of medium as well, the airbrush medium. We'll go ahead and add a touch of water and mix this together with the brush here. And I'll show you an alternate way. This is just another way to do it. You can mix in your airbrush, as I've shown in the previous video. I just wanted to show an alternate way to do it here. We've got a tiny syringe and a small little glass cup that we can use here to mix colors together. And I'm just filling it up here with the syringe, getting everything out of there, trying to use as much as you can. You want to clean your syringe with water immediately, just so no paint sticks in there and it's still usable afterwards. With that, we'll go ahead and start mixing and testing our airbrush here, our color. And see, we've got a nice dark blue there. Go ahead and test it on this here. As you can see, it almost looks black as it comes out. That's good. That's what we want. We want just a hint of blue, basically. And since this model is also made out of blue plastic, it's also very nice to use a darker blue and actually see where your paint is going on the model before you kind of do something a little bit lighter. And unfortunately, I thought my camera angle was a little bit better when I was recording this, and it was not. So my arm is going to be a little bit in the way of the video here. I apologize for that, guys. But essentially what we're doing here is just trying to hit the underside of the model and really just coat the entire model in this color. But what's really important is the armpits, underneath and in between the legs, underneath his ears and hair, really those in-between spots we want to cover with this color, because this is going to be our darkest shade on the model. Another thing to keep track of here is you can use the base as kind of a starting point for the difference in color between your plastic and the paint that you're applying. So if you have a model that's a similar color to the paint that you're putting on, like in this case, just look at the bottom of the base, and that will always give you a guide of like, okay, that's what the plastic looks like compared to the layers that we have right now. Now when doing base coats, or really any details with the airbrush, I tend to get pretty close to the model, about 3 to 4 inches or so. You don't have to do this, it just kind of depends on how you like to airbrush. It all depends on your viscosity of your paint, your PSI, and your type of airbrush as well. Alright, as you can see in the next step here, we have a nice even tone of a very nice dark blue. And from there, we're going to build up to the regular ultramarine blue. So we're just going to take the ultramarine blue, not mix it with anything but the speed paint medium, and we'll take this, mix them together, and we'll go ahead and create a nice mid-tone over our model. Now in these next couple of steps, keep in mind when you're mixing your paints, you're going to go for about the same viscosity that we went for with the dark blue. The only thing is we're going for a little bit less paint because we're not covering the entire model with this color. And for any X-Men fans, if you're going for more of a dark beast kind of color scheme, then I would just stick with these two steps and ignore the last one that we'll do later on. And again, always mix your paint very well and always test it out before you try it on the model. As you can see here, when this sprays out, it's still a bit dark from the color before. It means I didn't clean it out well enough, but as you can see, we're starting to build up to that bluish color. I also kind of created a bit of a jam, so we'll go ahead and just move the brush around and see if there's any kind of chunky bits that we need to pull out at the moment. Try to fix this jam easily, hopefully. Sometimes you have to take the whole airbrush apart and clean it, but it looks like we're getting through it a little bit here. I'll probably have to take this apart and clean it, but that's okay. All right, after cleaning it out, as you can see here, we're going to get a little bit better coverage and spray. And we're going to just kind of restore that mid-tone that he has. We're not really looking to get rid of the entire base coat that we had established earlier. So my the way I think about it is just aim at a 45-degree angle from his waist up, and any other leg parts that are kind of sticking out, like his knees kind of raised out, I'd hit that a little bit. Anything that you would think the light would be hitting, that's where I would hit him with the airbrush. And these colors are pretty close, so it's kind of subtle, but you can kind of see a bit of a gradient forming there on the model, and that's exactly what we're going for. Trying to bring out the biggest highlights on the raised areas and everything that is facing up, and then also just trying to leave the shadows that we established earlier. And once you've got a nice gradient built up there, we're going to switch over to our final color, which will be the highlight of the model. And for this, we're going to simply just take the ultramarine blue and add a little bit of white, about 2-to-1 ultramarine blue to the white. And of course, add a little bit of speed paint medium. And we're going to do the exact same thing we've been doing with the previous steps. And here you can add a little bit more white than we did with the matte black, just because blue is kind of a darker color and it's going to take a little bit more of the white to brighten that color up. And as always with these sort of basing steps, if you're using about 10 to 15 psi like I do when I'm basing with an airbrush, you can just do about 2 to 3 drops of the airbrush medium in your paints. And as we mix this together, you'll see that we're kind of making a nice light blue, kind of sky blue highlight. And we will use this pretty conservatively on the model here. We don't want to overwhelm it and kind of ruin the shadows and depth and the mid-tone that we've established earlier. So we'll just go ahead and the same rule that we used for the waist of the model at a 45-degree angle, we're going to use that same rule, but just you aim towards the head instead of the waist this time. The good thing about applying highlights with your airbrush is it's very easy to see. This step is always very easy to see compared to the previous ones. Sometimes you can be working with a color scheme and a type of plastic that don't really work well together, and it can be hard to tell what you're applying and what you're not applying. But the highlight step always seems to be fairly simple, and you can always kind of tell when you go overboard. And again, just be very careful doing the initial sprays here. We want to avoid doing huge splotches of highlight. We're not basing at this point, so just be very careful and liberal and just kind of do little sprays across the model with it. As you can see, the tops of his hair are picking up that color really nice. That's exactly what we're looking for on this model. All the raised details are what we're looking for to make pop with this color, and everything else we want to leave it as it is. Now, it's kind of hard to do this perfectly every single time. You definitely have to practice and get a feel for it. But once you get it down, it's a very satisfying way to do character models. I wouldn't do every single model this way. This I kind of save for more character models, bigger models, things that are kind of centerpieces or a little bit more important than your standard infantry models. But in a moment here, we will switch over to our final shot. And as always, guys, thank you for watching. Be sure to check the top link in the description for the giveaway, and happy wargaming.